Once upon a time in France, there lived a king who thought he was made of glass. Not figuratively, not emotionally. He genuinely thought if someone poked him wrong, he'd shatter. So he wore special clothes reinforced with iron rods to keep his body from breaking. He refused to be touched, refused to sit, even refused to fart too hard. And somehow they still let him rule the kingdom for 40 years. Welcome to medieval France, where madness wore a crown and everyone clapped. Thing is, Charles wasn't always this fragile. He was a cute kid with curly hair crowned at 11. 11. At 11, I couldn't keep a hamster alive. This kid was handed millions of actual people. Clearly, neither of us were qualified. So the kingdom was ruled by his drunk uncles, and they ran it like a bleeding pig in mud. War, debt, corruption, incest. By the time adult Charles took power, France was half dead and squealing. So he fixed it by swapping his drunk uncles for his drunk buddies. The only thing really changed was the hangover schedule. The move shouldn't have worked, but for a brief moment it did. He cleaned up corruption, implemented reforms, and taxed the rich. He even made peace with England, which in France is like hugging the guy who stabbed your dad and stole your dog. Twice. The peasants adored him, praised him as Charles the Beloved. He was competent, decisive, everything the kingdom begged for, right up until he started stabbing his own men in the forest. Let me walk you through how we got to that part. Charles was out on a raid with his knights. Hot sun, heavy armor, long ride. Suddenly, one of his tired men drops a lance. It hits another's helmet. Everybody laughs. Charles snaps, draws his sword, and slaughters a few of them. The knights freeze, 'cause stopping the king equals treason. Not stopping equals dying. So they just pin him down until he passes out. When he wakes up, he remembers nothing. Doctors called it a fever, which is medieval for, we don't know what the hell's going on, but try leeches and see what happens. And this was just the beginning of Charles the Mad. Soon he started forgetting names, faces, and entire days. He'd stare at mirrors for hours, then accuse his wife of being an imposter, which to be fair is how most marriages end anyway. And somewhere along the way he decided he was made of glass. He refused to sit without cushions, screamed if touched, had iron rods sewn into his outfits to keep from shattering. At that point he wasn't a man. He was a walking chandelier with anxiety. But the best part? The court didn't dethrone this lunacy. They just adapted. When the king saluted his steak, they stood at attention. When he debated policy with the soup, they took notes. When he screamed at the table, someone apologized on its behalf. Well, you got the point. He lost his mind, and they lost the balls to say it out loud. In a last-ditch attempt to recalibrate his madness, Charles's wife threw him a masquerade ball. Everyone showed up dressed as wild men, covered head to toe in flammable feathers. Enter one drunk noble with a torch. He leans in for a better look. 4 men were barbecued on the spot. Charles caught fire too, but his aunt tackled him and smothered the flames with her skirts. A shame, really. She was 1 second away from solving the kingdom's biggest problem. They called that event the Bal des Ardents. That's French for oops, all arson. Meanwhile, France split in 2. Brothers against cousins clawing for power. And when they weren't fighting, they paraded his twitching body around, making him sign treaties he couldn't read, and bless things he couldn't name. He once blessed a tax hike while convinced he was St. George, which made sense because he thought the royal accountant was a dragon. He wasn't a king anymore. He was a ventriloquist dummy made of glass that occasionally blessed furniture. Out in the streets, the power struggle between the 2 factions got so bad, Charles's brother was hacked to death. 32 sword strikes in broad daylight. France plunged into full civil war. One side wanted justice, the other wanted power. Charles wanted belly rubs and a biscuit. Meanwhile, England saw France circling the drain and invaded. At Agincourt, King Henry V didn't just defeat the French army, he buried them in alphabetical order. And Charles? He looked at the burning wreck of his kingdom, looked at Henry, and said, "You know what? You be the king." He even signed a treaty disinheriting his own son and handing the French crown to the English throne. It's like giving your house to the guy setting it on fire. Finally, after 4 decades of on and off madness, Charles died in his bed peacefully. Which is tragic, really. We were all hoping for something a little more shattering. Alright, thanks for watching. I hope to see you again.